Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to No Limits, a Mitch Rapp podcast. How you doing this week, Mike?
Oh, I'm good. I am ready to wrap up executive power. And forgive me if I jump right into it, but do you mind if I give a Twitter shout out right now, right off the bat?
Go ahead, do it.
All right. Well, I want to shout out one of our followers, Amor. You can find him on Twitter at AmorQGloria. He is our listener from the Philippines and was very excited. We're up to executive power. And so I asked, hey, can you give us some insider info on some of the geography and the different names and terms used by Vince in the book? And Amor was super helpful. And I do have one mea culpa to bring up here. He helped correct the record a little bit. So, you mind if I jump into that?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I found a really quite negative blog, commenting on executive power, and the title of it was "Vince Flynn needs to do some basic research on the Philippines." I'm like, oh, shots fired.
Man. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, the guy was making the claim that Abu Sayyaf would never operate in the region on where the story takes place, Dinagat Island, which is where the Andersons are being held in the rescue operation. He mentions the language that region would never speak, or the region of Abu Sayyaf and the terrorist group would never speak Filipino or Tagalog. And basically, Amor told me that's pretty accurate. The biggest thing that Vince had wrong was this island would probably never be a stronghold of Abu Sayyaf. There's another kind of extremist group that does operate in the region, but not the Islamic fundamentalist one, which was more in the southwest Bangsamoro region. So Amor did say the names, like I was mentioning last time, are indicative of these two sides of the Philippines, where Rizal would represent Jose Rizal. And though I said he was a revolutionary, Rizal is more of a national hero, but not in a revolutionary sense. Instead, he was a doctor and a writer. He penned two very patriotic Filipino novels. Those novels and his writing were what inspired others later on to revolt against Spanish colonial powers. And he was actually sentenced to death in 1896 because of those writings. So, yes, a national hero and icon to the Filipino people, but not a revolutionary himself. So,
inspiring revolutionary tendencies.
Exactly. 18 months after he was sentenced to death, the Philippines would declare its independence from Spain. And so his writings did inspire a movement that would, in his memory after his passing, lead to a free and independent Philippines. And Amor had to point out that's also largely thanks to the help of the Americans. So, nice partnership there.
Yes.
Yeah, the one thing he also said was that by naming the corrupt, really bad General Moro, that could be a little inflammatory, considering the Moro National Liberation Front was a guerrilla group active in the late 70s and early 90s to separate from the Republic of the Philippines. So he thought maybe not the most appropriate to name such a antagonist after that history. It could just incite some dissent or be insensitive to the ethnic groups in the Bangsamoro region. So I know there was a lot, but wanted to give a quick thank you to AmorQGloria on Twitter for reaching out, being a fan, and we're going to send him some stickers and bookmarks in the mail as a thank you. So
awesome. Oh, yeah, we love hearing from you guys wherever you are. So I'm glad you brought that to us, Mike.
Yeah, we got another fan who reached out, and we are very excited to welcome our newest patron, Bridget. Thanks for your message and reaching out to us. We hope you continue to listen and read some more Vince Flynn. Couldn't be happier to have you as a patron. So thanks for supporting the show.
Yes, and you'll be entered in our November book giveaway. So if you guys, if anyone wants to get in on this, it's going to be a reader's choice. We have a copy of Executive Power, Pursuit of Honor, Extreme Measures, Act of Treason, and The Survivor. So anyone who signed up to be a patron will be entered into that. We'll be doing that next episode. Also, anyone who signed up this month, so Bridget, your Patreon will be going to donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation. Anyone who signed up this month, as well as all the donations next month, will be going right towards that. So we're happy to we'll be getting you the final number on that sort of mid-December, late December on what we're actually going to be sending their way. So really excited to do that.
Nice.
So what are we covering today, Mike?
All right. Well, we are going to pick up at chapter 41 and get to the very end of Executive Power, which is the 5th book in the Rapp universe, but only the 4th book featuring Mitch Rapp. So we're still in the early stages of Rapp's career on the page, if you will. But you know what happens, Chris? When we finish a book, I feel like I need to summarize my thoughts. And the best way to summarize my thoughts on this book is in the form of a limerick.
I thought you would never bring it to me.
This is actually a 10-minute limerick I did scribble together watching TV right before we kicked this off. So forgive me if this is not one of my finest.
Give it to us.
All right, here we go. A hostage rescue attempt gets bungled deep in the Filipino jungle. A corrupt general, and leaks there are several. Coleman, Rapp, Wick, ready to rumble. David and Omar will do whatever they could for the goal of Palestinian statehood. Ben Friedman lies. Kennedy not duped by the guys. What to do? Anything Rapp would.
Honestly, you said it only
right.
took you 10 minutes, but I really like the second one, the second limerick. It's pretty good.
Well, you caught my reference at the end, right? What would you do? Anything Rapp would.
WWRD? Or no?
WWRD.
Yeah.
What would Rapp do?
What would Rapp do? There we go.
That was Coleman. Coleman was sitting in the jungle wondering what to do when a surprise comes his way, and there's only one answer.
What would Rapp
Whatever
do?
Rapp would do.
Yeah. It was. What does he say? It was pretty clear. Only one thing. What would Rapp do?
That's it. You should teach your kids that, as they're growing up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
What would Rapp do?
Patrick would do well learning from that. So
he'd be like, "What would Kylo Ren do?"
Exactly.
Isn't that his favorite?
Kylo Ren, or he's really into the Mandalorian.
Ooh, yes. I got to watch the new one.
Or anyone from, he's really big into, what is it, Minecraft. I don't even know what the heck that is, but Minecraft.
They don't have, characters in that, do they? It's names and stuff. I don't know.
Your guess is as good as mine, bro.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right. So, I love your limerick. Let's now dive into the second half plot analysis. I was thinking about the themes for this, and they're really just pretty much the same, a continuation of what we discussed in the first half. This idea of relationships, where we're expanding on these one-on-ones, particularly Mitch and Anna and Irene, Mitch and the president. These are really key things that we're going to see throughout the rest of this book. Commitment to a cause. Really, this book in the second half turns to being David or Jabril Katabi's, commitment to wanting Palestinian statehood and what he will fully do in order to achieve that. And the third thing that I sort of came up with, this idea of price for freedom, which is a continuation of that idea of commitment to a cause. What's the highest price you will pay in order to get freedom for your people? David is a very interesting character, and I mentioned this last time, how I said I liked him, but I guess the better phrase is I sympathize with him in the sense that what he wanted for his people is very good, and obviously the way he was very much a pragmatist in the way he was thinking about this whole Palestinian statehood and bringing about how in order to have peace, we can't have these extremist groups, but in himself he is being an extremist by bringing about death and killing all this stuff. So, but what is the price of freedom and bringing this to yourself and your community? So, I really, as we go along, we'll highlight these things more. So,
yeah, and that point exactly helps us pick up after the bombing in Hebron, because we just had David so committed to the cause But in a balanced way, he knows, even though he is an ardent Palestinian fighting for his people, he knows the leaders of groups like Hamas and the Popular Liberation Committee. He mentions Force 17, Islamic Jihad, Martyr Brigades. These are all the people in the meeting that he willingly takes out. So he knows it's kind of a give and take to get what he wants. And that's why he also turns this information over to Ben Friedman of Mossad and Israeli intelligence. So the book here really picks up with Kennedy hearing about the bombing, grilling Friedman on what the heck happened here, what's going on in Israel, come clean, tell me the truth. And I really like this quote where Kennedy knows Friedman's lying to her. And Vince writes, but in the hall of mirrors that were her life, she wasn't about to reveal what she really knew. So she didn't play all of her cards that she knows these helicopters have the Hellfire missiles and that the Israelis fired them because she's trying to give Ben a chance to come clean, get on board, work with them, give up the intelligence. And Ben Friedman eventually does say, yeah, these high-level targets were there, and even tells her Mohammed Atwa, the head of Palestinian General Intelligence, was there. These were high-value targets. And so Ben does eventually come clean to Kennedy and let her know it wasn't op, and they did try to take out Palestinian leadership.
But he doesn't go so far as to say, you know, he's still thinking that this is a bomb. Like they took out a bomb factory, and there was a meeting at the bomb factory. You know, so he's still not fully being honest here. Yeah. And obviously this.
He also doesn't mention David. That there's this character David involved, who is a shady character.
Right. You figure if right now he gives over her the information about David, then both the assassination in New York that was going to take place soon and the assassination in D.C. wouldn't happen. You know, like
wouldn't have happened. Yeah. He also thinks he's dead. Friedman
True.
Also thinks he blew him up, but he still holds back from Kennedy and telling her and revealing that there was this operative who gave us this intelligence.
I was thinking about that. Why wouldn't he? He just so blatantly just says, "Oh, he's dead," but they send in people to like plant evidence that this was a bomb factory. So like, why wouldn't you send in people to like ID the people who were killed?
Maybe it's a little harder than that, looking at how they bombed the whole damn village to hell, you know, back to Kingdom Come. So
true. Yeah. I don't know.
So another shady thing, though, that Friedman's doing is he's playing Prime Minister Goldberg, who he knows is more middle of the road than he is. You know, the Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister, is constantly concerned about a vote of no confidence from the cabinet. He's really concerned about, you know, losing his position and power. And so he's contemplating, you know, working on a resolution at the UN that would grant a pathway to peace and a Palestinian statehood, and Friedman's having none of it. He has drinks with him, brings up old times, he plays buddy-buddy, and Friedman eventually convinces the Prime Minister Goldberg to get even deeper into this, planting fake evidence, sending, you know, Israeli investigators and IDF forces into Hebron to control the scene, which is, you know, a grieving site of a Palestinian residential community. What is it going to look like when the IDF comes rolling in? But Friedman convinces the prime minister he has no other options but to go in, take control of the scene, and plant the evidence, which doesn't play well. It leads to some pretty raucous riots and protests. That comes up a little bit in the book. It doesn't play a central role, but you could tell that the Palestinians are really, really ready to blame Israel for this whole fiasco. And the prime minister has to be careful.
Yeah, everything that, you know, Prime Minister Goldberg he's sort of towing this line of he can't quite fully go into what Ben Friedman, and Ben Friedman is really a man out on a ledge here. And I mentioned this last time. He really should not be in this position. He should have been fired. He should have been sacked. Like the fact that the Americans thought that they could control him, you know, and even at the end here, we don't. Yes, the president calls for that Friedman should be sacked, but it never actually happens. Like Kennedy sort of like walks him back. Yeah. I don't know. Like the fact that he's still like in charge or is able to have such influence in the government over there is kind of crazy. But
yeah, Yeah, I don't know how they could have gotten him out of the picture earlier. Maybe they should have. But
I mean, the fact that they just let him, they had enough information on him to get him out of the picture. This just adds, he's sort of the root cause of this again, So
yeah. And while all this is happening, David is still plotting. He's still advancing. He's working with Omar, who's funding him. His next thing to really blame Israel or, turn international pressure against Israel is an attack on the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, who, of course, is living in New York. And this is the one where he shoots him, right, from the rooftop. He sets up posts in New York City and tracks the Palestinian ambassador leaving his home, realizes he's with a woman, and instead of taking the shot and possibly hitting her, again, another way you kind of want to sympathize with David. He doesn't want to hurt the woman with the ambassador, but I don't like what he does. Instead, he shoots the two bodyguards in front and behind, which causes a reaction where he can get a clearer shot on the ambassador. So, I don't know, kind of a weird thing, but again, David is doing whatever it takes to inflame, the passions against Israel and really get the world to unite behind a Palestinian cause, even if it takes violence.
Right, and we'll get to what this all is going to mean, why he's chosen to, one, literally kill the people who are supposed to also be wanting a Palestinian statehood.
Yeah,
he kills the Palestinian ambassador. We'll get to like the end game here, but before we get there, we have to go back to Mitch and Anna, right?
Oh yes.
The last time we saw Mitch, he'd just gotten shot in the ass, and he's like, I'm gonna go to sleep now, and then passes out. He has to fly back on a plane, laying down on his stomach because his ass was shot. And then when he gets back, he immediately, like, we're in his head, and he's trying to figure out ways how he can get around the fact of telling Anna, like, what the hell happened. He's like, what did I tell her I was actually doing? Can I stall this so that way I could say I was in San Diego and I had like a surfing accident? Like, he's always he's trying to figure out a way not to do it. And then he gets into the house and immediately doesn't tell her. Instead, like, sees her, like, she's obviously waiting for him, hasn't seen him in a while, and his one part of his body sort of takes hold instead of his head, and until she grabs his butt. I thought this butt squeeze.
It's a little passionate.
The butt squeeze of his where he got shot was just hilarious to me, and he it says it took him a couple seconds to register, and then he like screamed and flinched back, and she's like, "What the hell?"
Yep.
But then the ensuing scene that happens is she is pissed, so much so that she punches him and causes a black eye.
Him.
And that black eye is
she gets really mad. Sorry, she's not only mad that he wasn't going to tell her about getting shot and he lied about what he was doing, but Rapp goes, "Don't worry, everything is going to be fine." And the "don't worry" part is what sets her over the edge.
Yes.
She's like, "Don't worry about my husband getting shot and lying to me about doing some secret, army man in the Filipino jungle. Don't tell me not to worry." And boom, delivers a blow.
There's one line where she's like, where you got out to like acting like James Bond spy stuff, and he's like, "I'm not a spy," and she's like, "You know what I mean."
And I love this when he's flying home. He says, somewhere over the western U.S., he'd come to the awful conclusion that he would have to face the wrath of his wife head on. She was his wife, and no amount of truth or logic would save him from her wrath.
No, but this brings me to think that entire first half of the book sequence with Mitch, what Mitch is doing in the Philippines, is just a device to build tension between him and Anna.
Yep.
The whole point of that, like, the overarching part of this book is the David storyline with the, being this person who's trying to bring about Palestine, or he has this idea how to bring about Palestinian statehood. But the bulk of, or the first 40 chapters of what Rapp is actually doing, the whole purpose of that is just, one, we can see Rapp do some cool stuff. Second, he acts like an idiot and then third, that causes him to get in this huge fight with Anna, like, which is kind of disappointing to me. But
I mean, we're over the halfway point of the book, and for the rest of it, I'm going to be thinking, when does the mission in the Philippines come up? How is that related to the Israel-Palestine stuff? I'm thinking, how are the Anderson families being taken as hostages, and Abu Sayyaf, this terrorist group, going to play a role in the Palestine conflict? And how is David ever going to make contact with the Filipino general who we've been hearing about this whole time? And the two never even remotely come together. So
part of me on the reread, because I had read this book, I don't know, a while, like a year and a half ago, and then rereading it, I'm like trying to anticipate where the story is going to go again. I'm like, oh wait, is General Rizal like a bad guy? Like, does he come back and he's like, oh, Rapp knew that no, he never literally gets mentioned again. But anyways.
And he and Rapp were kind of buddy, or like Rapp like realized he was good and he was the good general, and he never comes back. So it was kind of like, what was that all for?
I guess I was remembering like a big twist, and we'll get to like the actual big twist. That there is a big twist in this book that at the end.
Sure.
It wasn't the one I was expecting. So
I'm with you. I was waiting for that twist that was related to the first half of the book, and that never came. Right. Besides Rapp getting punched, that was a bit of a twist. A little entertainment smack in the middle.
Well, and did you like the whole scene between Kennedy's on the phone, Mitch is in the office, Kennedy's on the phone, she's talking to Anna, she's like, oh, really? No, he didn't inform me that he got shot in the ass. Oh, I will make sure. And then I remember Rapp says, I can't take this much estrogen. And then she's like, well, take this testosterone, and she gives it right back at him.
Yeah, she schools him.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine she calls him Mitchell a few times.
She does.
That always happens.
And what I really liked about it was she actually says, and like, I guess, again, we mentioned that this was we saw a lot more of Irene and a lot more of her personality, but she says in like this one sentence where she says that other than my like my mother and my son Tommy, you are my closest friend. And like, she really thinks of him as, I don't know, a brother, a family member. Their relationship goes way beyond, anything. And the fact that he would just think, because some of the things he's thinking is, not akin to what like Kennedy's personality is. And so it was very offensive to her. So
It's true. While we're kind of stateside with Rapp and Kennedy, we don't see, and this is going to be something in our winners loser section at the end, we don't see that much action involving Rapp, but at the same time, he does some pretty badass things. So one is how he outs Assistant Secretary of State Amanda Petrie and Ambassador Cox. They were the two diplomats who leaked the mission, compromising it, causing the death of those two SEALs on the beach. And the president, and Valerie Jones want to have a whole plan, get out ahead of it, a press conference, a statement, try to move on, not let it blow up, in ways they can't control. But Rapp has a better plan to attend a National Security Council meeting. When Rapp walks in, the whole atmosphere changes, and you could tell that Petrie goes on the defensive. And so Vince writes, when Rapp comes into the Security Council meeting, here in their midst was a cold-blooded killer who had dealt with national security issues that they had wrestled with every day, but in a much more real and final way. He was a man who came to meetings unannounced and rarely spoke. He was a man who had the president's ear, respect, and gratitude. He was a man who feared could end any of their careers if he so chose. So when he entered the long, narrow room, all of the attendees squirmed a bit. And to make matters worse, instead of taking a seat at the table, he remained standing. We know that's because, he had a bullet in his ass, but it's also a power play. And he goes back and forth with Ambassador Petrie, who he knows leaked the mission. And she's playing innocent. And she actually gets a little testy with him. And then eventually his drop the mic moment is when he talks about, oh yeah, you think you've done more to protect America than anybody else? Let's see what the FBI has to say about that. He drops it that there was a leak. It came from her office, and he has emails, and the FBI has emails. He walks out of the meeting. 2 FBI agents come in and take her away. That's justice served right there.
Yeah, I really like that scene. Just the bravado that he plays, and the fact that she doesn't even realize what she actually, has done. She doesn't think, nothing that I could have done could have caused these 2 Navy SEALs to be killed. And even like after he lays down the information, it takes her a while to like even process the fact that, I am the sole reason why these 2 men are now dead and their families are without their fathers. That scene just really, it hit home. And Mitch plays a badass in that scene.
Yep. It's very Flynnian that we need to get these meeting scenes.
Yes.
And the way that goes down is like pure Flynnian, can't put it any better than that. There's a quote somewhere about meetings, how Rapp is just railing on meetings, hates meetings, what a waste. They go on too long. You never actually accomplish anything. And I'm like, man, that is my daily schedule at work. I love that shit. Love it.
And I quote, "If Rapp had learned anything during his lengthy study of American counterterrorism efforts, it was that there were too many meetings. Too many meetings that accomplished nothing, and more often than not, created more red tape and hassles for people who were on the front lines doing the important work. Meetings were a colossal waste of energy and resources. They never started on time. They always ran over, and that was the least of their problems."
Yo, Rapp, can you come to one of my faculty meetings at school and just drop that line, please?
I'm guessing Flynn was not a fan of meetings.
Can't agree more.
Yeah, very true.
Yep. Well, I mean, there are some meetings that are successful, and maybe not a meeting, but Marcus is pulling strings in the background. It's time we get to him. He's working at CTC with, do you remember the other chick's name? There was someone else on his team. Was it Brown or Braun?
I forget.
He's partnered up. Yeah, he's partnered up back at CTC, and he's got the British intelligence, these transcripts that Kennedy received saying, hey, there's some conversation with a guy going on with a Saudi prince on his yacht. It sounds pretty sketchy, talking about some attacks and a mission that they're going to plan to execute. And they get a partial picture. And so Dumond, he's buried in his work. It describes a cubicle kind of out of the way that he chose, and he designed the CTC setup so he can have his own corner. He starts running some facial recognition stuff. That plays a role in this book, which is, pretty early on, I would imagine that's developed a lot since 2004. But he's working the facial recognition, and he's also working bank accounts. He and his team decide to look at the money, and they're seeing that from Prince Omar, money not only went to this one shady character they have partial facial recognition for, but he finds these other accounts getting like $500,000 here, 500,000 here, 500,000 here. And he's trying to put it together, and he doesn't know who it is. And we have a really good cliffhanger of when he goes, I saw that name in the newspaper this morning. Puts it all together, and a few chapters later, we learned he traced the money to the French ambassador, Ambassador Jussard. And that's going to play a role in a little bit because, well, what's the relationship, right? This is the French ambassador who convinced France to go to the UN and push for Palestinian statehood. So this whole mission to advance this at the UN would have never came about if it weren't for this ambassador. And Marcus is tracking him down. And the US president, Hayes, is kind of getting some pressure to also vote yes on this. That's the thing with the Saudis, right? And the Saudi ambassador comes to the White House.
Yeah,
the oil embargo.
So the whole, I guess David's whole scheme here, right, is he took out the leaders of Hamas and the other, extremist groups that were running Palestine. He then flies over to the United States, takes out the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, brings up, that sort of is bringing up this whole, and obviously the whole time everyone is just blaming Israel, right?
Yeah.
So really to foment more anger against Israel, with the hope of they're now pushing for Palestinian statehood, and then you have the Saudi ambassador who comes over and says, "Listen, if you don't back this, we're gonna all the people of OPEC are going to, do an oil embargo," which the president says, that could be considered as an act of war. And then it gets brought up that we sort of done this stuff before. Anyways, immediately after that meeting, that ambassador is then taken out, which is again is like supposed to be all right. Israel is now being further and further crazy. They're now acting against the Saudis. Again, just trying to force President Hayes' hand to really vote yes for this statehood. All the while, everyone is like, all right, we think it's Israel. We think it's Israel. Ben Friedman's off the hook. And it's not until, like you said, Marcus really putting in the work to figure out that, it's actually not Israel. And like Mitch is like, just give us some time. Yeah. Give us 48 hours, stall the vote. I have a plan to do some of that. But let me find this guy, because they have now information about there was this guy who traveled. Obviously they have the information from the Brits. He traveled to the United States. He then took a train. They have facial recognition, as you said, that they know he got off at Union Station. He's in DC. And then there's the bombing, the explosion of the Saudi ambassador. Yep, it's probably connected. Let's put two and two together and let's find this guy.
It's interesting. All the legwork there was Marcus to realize the same guy who assassinated the ambassador in New York got on a train, came to D.C. Boom, the Saudi ambassador blows up blocks from the White House, freaking everybody out. So he digs that up. But Rapp is the one who connects the dots. Did you realize Rapp was much more involved in this book on a analytical side of things and less on the direct get involved in the action, taking care of business side of things?
You think about it, Rapp gets in the action in 2 points in this novel. When
the beginning and the very end.
Not even the beginning, I guess, like sort of semi-middle, when he sneaks a peek in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when he goes and confronts Omar. Like, that's it.
Yeah. He's not even the one to take out David, which I thought was interesting. So, I mean, we're ramping up to the conclusion here, and basically we've uncovered somebody else is behind this, and it's this mystery man David, who they do eventually ID as, Jabril Katabi is his Palestinian name. So Rapp can start following him. And then they also ID this money going to the French ambassador. And so we learn that France was really the one pushing for this UN vote, being very, very hardline on a deadline, that this vote is going to happen immediately. And President Hayes is about to give in. Like you said, Rapp begs and begs for time. I think Hayes gives him 12 hours and says, if you got nothing in 12 hours, the jig's up. We have to vote yes. We can't veto the resolution. And without exercising their veto power, a resolution on Palestinian statehood would pass in the Security Council and the General Assembly. So Rapp obviously has a plan here, and it's a pretty ballsy plan. He convinces the president to buy themselves some time and delay the UN vote by pulling the fire alarm, essentially. he convinces, I think they use, is it Turbs? He's the head of CTC. He replaced Irene when she got promoted. Yeah. That guy's a pretty sweet character. Irene really relies on him a bit. And Rapp even mentions that he trusts him. So Rapp's not letting any of his cards out. So he's not saying anything about David. He's not saying anything yet about the money going to the French ambassador. He's keeping his cards close to his chest, but he's okay with this Turbs guy, the director of the CTC. Kind of remind me when we talked about the different DCIs. There was this one guy. He never was DCI, but he was head of CTC, Jose Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. He was like one of these administrators that all his people loved to work for, and you could really tell he had their backs. I kind of felt like this Jake Turbs was someone like that, because Rapp lets him in on it and says, hey, they call in this bomb threat at the UN, and the UN evacuates and can't have the vote.
Well, there's even like the whole backstory on Turbis, where he's like Mitch is explaining to the reader or whatever that he had got told he needs to retire, and then he shoots back to the whoever's in charge of him, being like, "All right, well, I like he had obviously been following up. You know, he had information. He like Stansfield. He had information on everybody,
He's like Stansfield, yeah.
And he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna let everyone know that you have this mistress. I'm gonna let your wife and the other person that know you have you're having an affair. So then
and that's how he gets the promotion. By blackmailing the guy.
I like that, dude.
I think it just shows he's learning the lessons, you know, similar to Stansfield and Kennedy of, you know, always be prepared and fight back and stand your ground. And he did. So instead of retiring, he actually became the boss. So
yeah, keep your enemies closer.
Yeah,
or no. What is it? What's the? We messed this up last time. Keep your enemies.
We're gonna mess it up again.
Keep your enemies close and your friends closer. There it is. That's what
your allies closer. There we go.
Yeah.
I think that's it. But they call him this bomb threat, so the UN evacuates, and they can't have the vote, giving Rapp just enough time to pull together all the evidence, convince the president you have to veto this resolution. You can't let it go on. And what's interesting is during all this time, we hear about more and more suicide bombings in Israel. So people are blaming Israel. You know, if the vote happens and the U.S. vetoes it, it would look really bad because right now Israel is not playing well in the public. But the suicide bombings keep going off. It seems like the violence is going to be nonstop. So Rapp needs this time when the vote is postponed at the UN to track David. And he calls up his crew. He gets Coleman involved. They get in a plane, and again, Marcus found out that David is flying to France. And we know southern France, in Nice, is where Omar's yacht is, and he's often been meeting with Omar on the yacht. So Rapp and Coleman beat David out to the yacht, and they have it bugged. I like how Coleman actually goes out and bugs the yacht. He uses his scuba diving skills. He swims up to the boat and bugs it. And that way Rapp is going to get all the evidence he needs to convince the president this whole thing's a ruse. Don't allow the UN vote to take place. You know, it's all under basically all the hatred that's been fomenting against Israel is all fake and all fabricated by this mastermind. So they get the recording, and then Rapp, when he's listening to it, is like, oh shit, I don't even have to take out David because Omar, the Saudi prince, has him killed. And they hear it right on the recording. He basically airs all his laundry, says what his plan was, how he masterminded the whole thing, and then Omar kills him. And Rapp has the recording to bring back to the president.
I know the first time I was reading this, I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. Were you expecting David to be killed? I thought he was going to kill Omar.
I was like, when's Rapp going to bust in here?
Yeah.
I was like, when is Coleman going to detonate this yacht and they all go down? And I'm just like, when is Rapp going to bust in and do some badass shit? And then all of a sudden, a random bodyguard strangles David to death. Like, what?
Yeah. It was kind of an interesting choice by Vince to kill David.
Yeah. Rapp does get in a little action here.
He does.
When the prince thinks he got rid of David, his plan is set. The UN's going to vote, you know, the way he wants, and you know the prince will look pretty good to the rest of the royal family that has kind of seen him as like the black sheep. They haven't really taken Omar in. Well, now look what he accomplished. He, you know, kind of brought down the Israelis. He pressured the Americans with his plot. He's proud of himself, but who's waiting in his limo when he walks off the yacht and gets in the car?
Mitch Rapp.
And as he says, "I am your executioner." It's a pretty good line.
Yeah. Rapp gets his action as he always does. I feel like it's always in the last chapter or the epilogue where he gets these kills, but they're always great.
Yep. 1 in each kneecap and a 3rd in the forehead.
Yeah.
Standard Rapp stuff.
Well, and this is the information that they'll then use to show the Prince Faisal. And I think this is an important situation that sets up, I don't know, a couple, if not the next book, but in a couple books where this relationship between the President Hayes and Faisal is going to be important.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the fact that, you know, he's showing him this and trying to get into his trust to be like, hey, you know, this is what's going on. Like, you owe us. This is going to become important later down the road. So,
yeah, because Faisal's the crown prince, who is the heir to the throne, and I like this when Hayes is going to turn over the evidence, and Kennedy too. They deliberately decide to leave Rapp's voice in the recording because it's like you could have really ticked off the crown prince if they knew an American operative killed his brother or cousin,
his brother,
one of his family members, his brother, right? Omar's his brother. And it's like you could really tick him off if you leave in, you know, the intelligence report that Rapp or an American operative did this. And they kind of say, no, you know what? I think that's good. We're being honest. It shows the crown prince we're being honest, and it shows Faisal that they know there's divisions in the family. Like, they didn't like Omar in the first place,
right?
So it was kind of like helping out the royal family for getting rid of this like loose cannon of a hedonistic brother who was wasting their money and giving, you know, the royal family a bad name,
right? Yeah. So in the end, you know, the president demands that the French hold this peace conference, and, you know, both sides are going to come. They show the crown prince this meeting, and then there's this final scene that I wanted to talk to you about where Rapp, you know, shows his gun to the president and says, "This is the only thing that they understand." What did you think about that? Because I don't fully. I mean, maybe this is just the left coming out in me, but I don't fully believe that that's the only thing that these people understand. Both sides, like, that's like literally fighting is the only thing they understand.
So, you know, that line also to me came off, you know, reading the wrong way. I went back to the text though, and you know what I realized? The grammar that Vince chose hinges on the word zealot. Because at first I was like, is Rapp really trying to tell the president, you know, violence is all the Middle Easterners understand?
That's the way I read it at first.
Yeah.
First reading.
I went back though, and the quote was, if you want peace, this is the only thing the zealots will understand. Once they are dealt with, only then will Israelites and Palestinians be able to live side by side.
Okay.
And once I parse that apart, I do think that's the truth. I do think having these radicalized groups that, you know, are such a small part of the population, but if their voice is getting so much attention in the argument and the debate, it's hard for the peaceful sides to come to the negotiating table and get anything done. Because while they're doing it, a suicide bomb will go off and enrage people, you know?
Right.
Or while the peaceful sides are using diplomacy, the zealots will be out there screwing it up for everybody. So I think if you take that nuance, I'm on board with the essence of that statement.
Yeah, just look at the Afghan-Taliban peace talks right now. So
exactly.
But no, I when I first read that, I was just like, is Flynn just trying to say that no matter what we do, it's just going to be, you know, it's shit over there? And I was like, that's such a, I don't know, a negative way to look at the kind of
it's
that.
Defeatist. Yeah.
So. Anyways, but no.
It also shows there's no agency,
you
know, among the actual players for solving their own peace. But I think that is true as long as the zealots, who will use violence every time in very gruesome ways, if they have all the bargaining chips or all the, you know, attention, you know, peace is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that's the book.
It's time for our winners and losers, our zero-sum game. I'm curious, Chris, how do you want to wrap up this book? Were there any questions that stood out to you or things on your mind, you know, before we get into our final ratings and what we liked and didn't like?
Yeah, so just a few things that I was thinking about was, you know, who is the villain? We sort of touched on this the last pod, but who is the villain of this book? You know, is there this? I've coined this. No, I haven't coined this term, but you know, I've coined this term in our pod. Who is the big bad? You know, and to me, if I had to choose, obviously, I guess David is the bad guy here. But again, like I mentioned, like I sympathize with him. I kind of liked him as a character. I guess if you wanted to say Prince Omar is the bad guy, because he's the one at the end, like that twist where he kills David. General Moro is a bad guy, but there wasn't like really like a central villain in this novel.
Yeah. I'm 100% with you, and I think it overall that weakened the storyline. Like, I wanted a Hank Clark, right? I wanted a mastermind, and no one individual really brought the narratives of the storyline together. So it's like the diplomats got a really bad rap. Okay, there's Amanda Petrie, Assistant Secretary of State. Was she really a big villain? And then people taking bribes. General Moro took bribes. The French ambassador took bribes.
Right.
There were all like these little disparate kind of disconnected bad people going on, but no one really uniting that cause or pulling those storylines together. So
I think what clouds my mind is the fact that David talks about, even though I guess David is supposed to be the bad guy, but he talks about these things and he's very like relatable in terms of, like he talks about his mother and he talks about like how we actually need peace, and he like understands like the situation. So you begin to sort of like him as a character or understand his like what he's going through. And I think that's where you begin to like, oh, is he the bad guy? I guess he's the bad guy. Like,
yeah,
maybe if he had been this sort of maniacal guy, like I just want Palestinian statehood at no cost. But I mean, I guess, but again, he thinks about the cost when he sees like he doesn't want to kill. He wants to take out a small population of people who he knows are bad guys, and he gets pissed off when Ben Friedman,
launches all those indiscriminately.
Missiles.
Yeah. And he actually sees a woman carrying a baby and can't put her down, can't put the baby down, and his heart's broken. He's like, I was not a part of that. That was not my plan.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, I don't know. That was one of the big questions I had. And the second thing that I was thinking about is, how do these two storylines hold up? I mean, do you like them being together?
I gotta admit, I really didn't. And I don't want to be hypocritical, because in the past I have critiqued like the third option when the storylines flip-flop so much, but then there was the payoff. They all did come together because of Hank Clark.
Right.
So I looking back, I really liked that, because in this book, the dueling storylines I thought were okay. I was kind of trying to gel with it, but when the Philippines stuff was just dropped entirely, and then, 50-60% of the book is just straight up the Israel-Palestine conflict, and the two never connected, it didn't hold up for me. I didn't like how this book read as two separate parts with it a stretch. It was really a stretch to find any sort of, link between the two.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the main part of the Philippine story was to set up this conflict between Anna and Mitch. Like, it was a long con to set up that conflict. So
yeah. And so, well, we're already on winners and losers. Another question. Let's talk about Anna. We in the past have tried to defend her. Did she have a point in what she was saying and arguing with Rapp about? What do you think about Anna here and how far she goes in this storyline?
Well, I think one of my winners is I think Anna and Mitch's relationship actually has gotten stronger in this book. I do think that Mitch has realized, one, they had their honeymoon and he said, all right, I have to change. And then they had that conflict through the whole Philippine things. And he's like, listen, he's starting to think about her side of of the relationship and what he has to give to her. So I think she's a winner in that sense. I also think like Anna and Irene's relationship has really grown. Like that was one of the big, we talked about relationships. That was one of the big, we were actually able to see that in this novel in a couple of different chapters. So I think Anna sort of won, is definitely a winner in this book in terms of getting a better relationship with her husband and getting a better relationship with her husband's boss. So
yeah, it just took a black eye,
yeah,
to wake Rapp up.
Did. Yeah.
A sock in the face. Though I agree, there was that nice moment where Mitch without actually apologizing, he did apologize in the sense of he said, "I'm going to be more open with you."
Right.
He does set the groundwork and say like, or he sets the red line and says, "You cannot demand knowing where I am at every moment, but I will promise to be more open and tell you about what I'm doing." Although he does also promise, "I will not lead any more missions." Did you catch that?
But I remember he tells her where he's going on this last mission to France, and says,
Yeah,
like, so it's a give and take, and I think their relationship is growing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is he going to try to parse that statement apart and get out of it, like where he says, "I will not lead any more missions,"
no, he
because Kennedy's calling the shots, or "I'm not leading a mission because the president's really the commander in chief." I'm just wondering if that he's going to kind of come back on his promise there a little bit.
It's just like when he is on that plane, he's like, "Wouldn't I actually tell Anna what I was doing? Did I say I wasn't going to lead?"
Yep.
Yeah, so
I'm just going to go peek under this tent flap real quick now and, see who's under there. It's not really getting involved, is it?
Sneak a peek. I'm just going to sneak a peek.
I'm not going to crawl through the jungle for like 2 miles and meet up with Scott Coleman and the boys and plan out a mission and then go into a terrorist camp and, rescue a family or anything. It's not dangerous.
No. Completely chill. Completely chill.
I'm not breaking my word to Anna, am I?
What'd you say?
Well, you got shot in the butt and you got punched in the eye socket. So there you go.
Mitch got it.
All right. Any other final winners or losers?
Losers. I had Flynn's knowledge of the Philippines. we touched on that in the Twitter roundup. The dueling narratives. I didn't vibe with that. And then the second half of the book was I don't know. I thought that if you had taken the two books apart, they each could have been better on their own.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'll just wrap up. The biggest winner for me of the entire book was the jungle scenes.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
Which are like the first 40% of the book.
Yeah.
Everything about missions on the ground in the Philippines, boarding the surf, approaching the beach, the amphibious landings, when you're hiking through the jungle, Coleman, Wicker, and the boys. I thought all that was way more exciting than anything else that came in the rest of the book. And unfortunately, it just got cut off and dropped at the halfway point, but did love that part. All right, so what's your number, Chris? I think on all these books, you've been higher than me generally. You've generally been more friendly and generous in your ratings, right?
Well, when we were talking about like, what was Executive Power about? Oh, it's the Philippines. And I don't remember liking that book. And I was already like sort of coming into it like with a negative vibe. But on reread, I actually I kind of like as a whole, I enjoyed rereading it. But it's not like one of my most favorites. So I gave it a B-. I gave it a 7.8. Yeah, that's where I stand.
Well, the trend continues. I am quite a ways lower than you. I was between a C and a C+. I gave it a C+, really liking the Coleman stuff and the jungle scenes. So I'll round up to a 6. I'll round up to an even 6.
Oh, man.
But, yeah. Hey, Memorial Day's next. So get ready,
I know.
everybody.
I was just going to say that.
Ready.
We both really like Memorial Day. So
you might see the first straight A from me.
The next two
you just might.
The next two books are amazing. So
I'll put it this way. If I were grading that in my class, I'd give it extra credit points.
Yes.
And I don't give extra credit points that often.
Yes.
Kids always want extra credit. I'm like, how about you just do your original work in the first place? Then you won't need any extra credit.
But extra credit is better. Because it's extra.
Speaking of extra, you know what I love doing on our part 2 episodes of every book? The cover discussion.
We're very extra.
We got to get into the extra discussion of these covers. And I'm I'm gonna hold back right now, but I have something to say about one of them.
All right.
But let's start positive. Which ones did you like, Chris, and which ones did the listeners like?
Okay, so just to give you a little bit of, this is obviously an audio medium, not a visual medium, but if you want to get a good look, go on our Twitter or our Instagram or Facebook to see these. But so the winner for me, if I had to pick, was either A or D, which I'll describe. A is, I think, the original cover, which is this like yellow background with the seal, United States seal, and it has a little bullet hole, smoking bullet hole in it. I personally like D, which I believe is like one of the standard German international ones. I've seen like this figure in a lot of the German international ones from other ones, and it's a picture of like a helicopter. I'm imagining, can't really see the background, but when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, this is probably the helicopter in the Philippines. As opposed to our fans, they got C got a lot of love, which I think is like one of the current iterations of it, which is just like this dark background with the Capitol building and a flag, traditional, DC executive powers type stuff. A got a lot of love, the original cover. Also, which got some love was this G and H, which the
honorable mentions.
Yeah, the honorable mentions.
For sure.
So G is this amphibious like landing scene, sort of like in the night, which I imagine like is the opening scene. Like that's what I was sort of picturing with the Navy SEALs. And then the second one is these two helicopters coming in, which also could be with like this sort of yellow background and a seal, which could be like, Coleman coming in with his team, or any sort of these two are very believable in terms of the actual plot of the book. And I think what you're going to go off on in the second is the fact that there are recurrent book covers that we discuss that have nothing to do with the fucking plot.
I can't. I just can't. So the ones you talked about have helicopters. Yeah, helicopters come up at least twice in the book.
Yes.
And I think in H, those could be the longbows, right?
Oh,
that
yeah.
Might even be the
that could be that.
In Hebron, it might be the Israeli helicopters. And then G, there's at least 2 scenes with beach landings or amphibious craft.
Yes.
And it's got like this infrared kind of like nighttime, night vision goggle, kind of bluish green haze. And I'm like, that's so badass. And it happened in the book. I was so ready to say, these might be my favorite covers we've seen so far.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because they relate to the books. And then I look at E, and I lose my shit. I lose my shit. It's dark gray, so it's gray tones, which sucks. But what sucks even harder is there's a man in an overcoat running down an empty highway. It looks like there's snow on the ground. Not one part of the story takes place anywhere remotely where there would be snow on the ground. And he's chasing a car, which looks like it's from the fucking 1950s or something. He's chasing a car in the middle of nowhere, and there's power lines. Why do there always have to be power lines going over this highway? It makes no sense. It doesn't make sense for the book. It also makes no sense for a story I would give a crap to read about. So it doesn't make sense any which way you try to slice it. Doesn't make sense.
Why is there always power lines? Why is there always a man running? So this is also the case with B.
It's the running man.
With B, which is another, this is like, I think the current mass market paperback that you can buy on Amazon is B. It's a man running up a staircase. And this is a little bit more defensible than E, because at least you could say, all right, maybe this is Rapp in the CTC. He just thought of something. He's running upstairs from the gym to go see Marcus. Or maybe this is, I don't know, David running up the stairs to, the assassination plot. But like, literally E, there is not a single scene you could even fathom.
Dude, search the word stairs. I'm going to open the book on my Kindle, and I'm going to search the word stairs. And I doubt it comes up once. Maybe it comes up once in passing. Yet, somebody in an office, and speaking of Rapp hating people working in meetings and offices, someone in an office, I assume multiple rounds of meetings, somebody's got to approve this, sat there and go, great idea. guy running up the stairs in a, dingy basement, crummy, rundown staircase. Like, Rapp is not in, some third world country running down a staircase into a bunker to escape nuclear weapons in this book. Never. Not once. All right, stairs. I got the book open.
So this is exactly why we haven't been picked up by like some book company, because we are shitting on something that their executives greenlighted.
Well, they should do a better job. And if they want honest opinions on book covers, I'm not a visual designer. I'm a history teacher. I could tell you not to put a staircase on the cover of Executive Power. All right, stairs is mentioned quite a bit in the book. Downstairs comes up in chapter 14. Stairs comes up in chapter 16 twice. In chapter 31, they walk down the metal stairs for several decks and then down a narrow passageway. Oops.
All right, so maybe someone just Google search stairs. But anyways, this is a recurrent theme, and we're going to continue doing this because I just love talking to you about these things. But it's very obvious that these two lines of, it's either a seal with something in the seal, or which is like the original line, and then like these new age lines of paperbacks are things that are just cool Running Man things in either DC or in the middle of fucking nowhere.
But there's also this one line which stuck around, which is that like modern. It's kind of like a very modern color scheme. So it's got the dark shadows, and it's got these bright blue, almost neon kind of shadows. Has a bright, vibrant American flag. It looks like maybe the Capitol building. So there's also that line, which is choice C, which people loved. We had almost 40 people on social media respond that they like C. The composition of it is phenomenal. So great one. I don't think it has much to do with the plot of the book, with the Capitol building, but pretty decent design if you think of like a modern, contemporary, art style. So I don't mind that.
Is it too much to ask for the book cover artist to actually read the book?
I guess it is. We don't know the publishing industry, but I guess that, to me, that would be the number one requirement. Hey, we want you to design a book. How about you read it? Or a cover. How about you read the book? Is that not something in the industry that happens?
I mean, even if you just read you could just read like 10 chapters of this book, and I could come up with a cover of it.
Yeah. Anyways, some of them are pretty cool.
All right. Anyways, that's our cover section.
A, C, G, and H. Pretty badass. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, the OG one, A, is pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice and crisp. It's very clean. Gold tones, big seal, and the smoking bullet. So that works for me.
Again, we have to thank our patrons, including our special operator, Sherry F., and our special agents, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Roman, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, and Jeff. Please subscribe, rate, and review us using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us online at mitchrappod.com or using our handle at mitchrappod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.